Hello guys, in this session we are going to continue from the last session where we stopped at the 7th 5-year plan. In this session we will look into this concept that is called liberalization and privatization and globalization. Actually I am not going into the reforms. I am only starting the 8th 5-year plan. So what exactly this 8th 5-year plan? And all of you know, and it was a very well known plan that between 1992 to 1997, perhaps this is the first plan in India where the continuation of the planning actually happened. If you look at 1951 to 1991, this journey, there were many stops, there were many halts when it comes to the 5-year plans. We had given 3 annual plans holidays. We had also given 2 annual plan holidays in 1990 and 1991 and 91-92. But from here onwards, till 2014, there is not even a single year where we stopped for planning. So definitely, 8th 5-year plan is one of the important plannings where from this plan onwards, we had started something called indicative planning, which I explained you in the last class itself. Indicative planning is nothing but what? Instead of giving more importance to only public sector, now the government will openly create an ambience for the private sector itself. So instead of regulation, now the government will move on into facilitation, isn't it so? So what exactly this particular 5-year plans, that is 8th 5-year plan 1992 to 1997. So it was brought by P.V. Narasimha Rao. So P.V. Narasimha Rao, he was the Prime Minister when it comes to 1992 government, and with P.V. Narasimha Rao. So that was the time, who was the finance minister? Manmohan Singh, he was the finance minister. So already I told you, by the time we reached 1990, we had a huge crisis, isn't it so? We had a huge crisis. In that particular crisis, actually, it was these 2 people, that is, one is P.V. Narasimha Rao and another one is Manmohan Singh. These 2 people, they brought this something called new economic policy of India. So what exactly this new economic policy of India? It is nothing but LPG reforms, which I showed you in the earlier slide. What exactly LPG reforms, that will come as a separate chapter. So this, the top priority was actually given to the development of human resources, that is employment opportunities, public health and education. For these 3 important things, actually we had given more and more focus and more priority. Not only that, in this particular time period, India went for loan to IMF. If you remember, there is one body called IMF and World Bank. IMF means International Monetary Fund. World Bank, you know it very well. So when it comes to Indian economic crisis, under the new economic policy of India 1991, India went for a loan because, as I already told you in the last slide itself, India had a problem when it comes to the foreign exchange reserves. Our foreign exchange reserves, they became very little. It went to the very minimum level. Almost all the foreign exchange reserves, we had the foreign exchange reserves only for next 15 days. After next 15 days, you cannot do any imports. So the money was over. In that particular time period, we went for a loan around $7 billion. They were given as a loan to India under the new economic reforms or LPG policy. What was that? I will explain it later. So under this plan, P.V. Narasimha Rao government has launched the new economic policy 1991. Why actually we launched this new economic policy 1991? Because when we went for the IMF, generally when you take any loan, you have to put some security, like you have to put some collateral, exactly. So top priority was actually given to the development of human resources, that is employment, education and public health. So why actually we had given top priority to the human resources? Because without human resources, so definitely you cannot improve your economy. And not only that, during this plan, P.V. Narasimha Rao government has launched the new economic policy of India, that is in the 1991. This new economic policy itself is called as LPG reforms. So why actually we brought LPG reforms? Anyway, that I will explain in the next chapter. But on a lighter note, we went to loan to IMF. IMF means International Monetary Fund. When we went to loan to IMF, this International Monetary Fund, they were ready to give the loan to Indian government, but they said, what is the collateral you will put? Collateral in the sense security. So how much security, how much collateral you can put for the $7 billion that the IMF was actually giving as loan? That collateral was this LPG reforms. So IMF basically said, if you really want foreign exchange currency, that is in terms of $7 billion loan, the Indian government has to launch a new economic policy on the lines of liberalization. That is nothing but LPG reforms. So they gave money, we started LPG reforms. So we never implemented the LPG reforms out of our conviction, but they were implemented only because of our compulsion. So it was a compulsion put by the IMF itself. So if you look at here, of course, many things happened. We brought the LPG reforms. We opened the windows of our economy to the private sector. Many private companies, they entered into India. Many foreign private sector companies also, they started business in India. Indian economy became huge. All things happened. And if you look at the outcomes of this particular economic policy of India, new economic policy, the rapid economic growth, which means the GDP started rising high and high and high. And high growth of agriculture, even agriculture sector growth also, it improved. And not only that, the manufacturing sector also picked up. And when it comes to the service sector, it became exceptionally good. So the service sector, especially IT and ITES, information technology and information technology enabled services, telecom, banking, all these services, they became exceptionally good, which is almost equal to the world class, companies we have developed. If you look at today, Jio, Airtel, they're all world-class companies. There is no doubt about it. So the growth in exports and imports, improvement in trade, current account deficit, everything increased. And definitely, even though we didn't like the economic reforms, but in one way or other, economic reforms actually helped India. So 8th 5-year plan is a very important plan. And I reminded you and I explained you in the earlier classes also, from this 8th 5-year plan onwards, we have abandoned the imperative planning and we had started something called indicative planning, right? And the target, if you see, definitely we had achieved a very good growth rate. The target was 5.6, whereas we achieved 6.6. So definitely this is the first time that India crossed this limit of 6% of GDP. And the next one, it became a cakewalk. From the 9th 5-year plan onwards, again it was under the reins of, so definitely your P.V. Narasimha Rao, but in the year of 1998 to 2004, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he became the Prime Minister. So that's why definitely we can say this is under the leadership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and it has 4 important dimensions. These are quality of life, that is standard of living of the people must increase. Generation of productive employment, yes, definitely. Regional balance. One state is rich, another state is poor. These differences has to go away. So they wanted to bring the regional balance, and not only that, self-reliance also. What exactly meant by self-reliance? No longer dependent on the foreign countries for our requirements. Better to do the job on our own. And not only that, the main focus was actually given to growth with social justice and equity. I already told you the goals of the 5-year plan. What was that? 4th goal of the 5-year plans, equity and social justice. So social justice and equality or equity, social justice and equality, they must be combined with GDP. So our target is not simply achieving growth or GDP, but growth that is included with justice, fairness and equality. So that is where actually if you combine these two things, you can call it as inclusive growth, growth for all. So that was the concept brought for the first time in India by Atal Bihari Vajpayee regime. So it was launched in the 50th year of independence, because in 1947 we got the independence. So if you simply add 50 years, it will become 1997. And the target growth rate was 6.5, whereas achieved was 5.5. But still fine, we had achieved a very good growth rate. And next we entered into the 10th 5-year plan. In the 10th 5-year plan, again 2 regimes actually came. It was started under the Atal Bihari Vajpayee, but it was continued by Manmohan Singh, because Manmohan Singh government, it was formed in the year of 2004. And this plan was actually aimed at double the per capita income in India in the next 10 years. Of course, we haven't reached the target very well, but okay, we have reached up to 70 to 75% of the target. Not only that, it aimed to reduce the poverty ratio 15% by 2012, and the reduction in gender gaps, literacy, wage rates by at least 50% by 2007. And the target growth rate for the first time we put as 8.0% of target, 8.0% of GDP, and we had achieved 7.8, close to the target. So definitely from the 10th 5-year plan onwards, India's GDP has increased for the first time by 7% of GDP. This particular achievement, for the first time we achieved in this 5-year plan, exceptionally good plan. There is no doubt about it. And again, the Manmohan Singh government continued its journey, because in 2004 they won the elections, and again in 2009 they had won the elections for the second time. So again, this was also under the reins of Manmohan Singh, but this plan was prepared by C. Rangarajan, a very well-known personality in Indian political system and also in the Indian economic system. And the main theme of this 11th 5-year plan was rapid and more inclusive growth. What exactly meant by inclusive growth? Growth for all. The fruits of the growth must be available to all the sections in the country. Even the last sections of the society, they must take the fruits of this growth, right? So this was the time actually India landed in a huge problem, that is 2008 to 2011 economic crisis, that what was started in United States of America. The tremors of this economic crisis, actually it was felt in India also. Even though there was a little bit of skirmishes happened in Indian economy and its growth rate, but still we did a very good job. We had given some package, and that was the time Pranab Mukherjee was the finance minister of this country, Manmohan Singh was the prime minister. So the growth rate also we achieved, it was good. 9% we targeted it and 7.9% we achieved. And if you look at here, and we had other targets also, increase the agriculture GDP growth rate to 4%, definitely we have achieved it also. And also create 7 crore new work jobs and reduce the educated unemployment to below 5%. Not only that, ensuring 33% of the direct and indirect beneficiaries of all schemes to women and girl children. So this is where actually the concept of women empowerment came into the limelight. Women empowerment became so important in UPSC. Every year, one way or other, the UPSC is asking questions on this particular concept. So the more and more importance for the women empowerment actually came in the 11th 5-year plan. And increase forest and tree cover by 5%. And increase forest and tree cover by 5% because in this particular time period, 2007 to 2012, the concept of climate change actually received so much of importance in the world. As India is also not an exception to the world countries, this concept of climate change, sustainable development, millennium development goals, they actually came as very important concepts in the 11th 5-year plan itself. So again, 11th 5-year plan, it was also a success because the target was 9% and we had achieved for the first time 7.9% of GDP. Somewhere in 2010 actually we achieved 10% of GDP in 1 year. So you can see this plan is very exceptional. As I already told you, from 8th 5-year plan onwards, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, there is no stoppage until we dismantle the planning commission. And the last one, but not least one, 12th 5-year plan. This 12th 5-year plan also, it was under the reins of Manmohan Singh, but we couldn't continue this 12th 5-year plan because the planning commission was dismantled by the newly formed government of Narendra Modi in the year of 2014, and we replaced the planning commission with a new organization called Niti Aayog. We will talk about the Niti Aayog later. And the main theme of this particular 12th 5-year plan was this: faster, inclusive and sustainable development growth. This was asked as a question in UPSC already. In somewhere around 2014 and 15 paper, they had already asked this question. And the growth target was 9%, but we couldn't realize what was the achieved target because we started the 12th 5-year plan in 2012. We cancelled the planning commission itself in 2014. So it never ended its journey. So the 12th 5-year plan, it was discontinued plan. Even though the government never said it officially, but because planning commission was not there, then who is there to estimate how much the growth rate it achieved in these 5 years? So finally, this was the end of our planning. In 1951, very quickly we adopted the planning and by the time we reached 2014, we ended that planning that much quickly. So this is the wonderful journey of the Planning Commission and its journey of the 5-year plans in India. If you look at some of the previous questions, modernization means, consider the following statements. Modernization means structural changes in economic activities that change the feudal economy into a progressive economy. The objective was categorically mentioned for the first time in the 6th plan. Yes, definitely. So this is the correct statement. In the 6th plan, employment was accorded place for the first time. I told you Garibi Hatao employment generation programs, they continued from the 6th 5-year plan onwards after the 5th 5-year plan. In 5th 5-year plan, we gave the slogan and we took it to the maximum paramount level in the 6th 5-year plan. So both statements are correct and the answer is C. So this is the end of your 5-year plans. Thank you. This is our wonderful journey when it comes to the 5-year plans. We will again meet in the next session with a new concept.